Hello, my name is Kristen. Welcome back to Mystifying Miracles. We go over true stories every week, twice a week. They always have at least one miracle in them. A lot of times, as we find out, there's more than one in each story. So listen along and we'll get started for today. Our story is about a sudden stranger, and this is Jamie's story. This took place in the state of Maine. Jamie, her husband, her 18-year-old son, and her 16-year-old daughter, they decided to climb Mount Katahdin, and that's in Maine. It was the highest mountain. Is the highest mountain there in Maine. And the summit, let's see here, that's 5,267 feet. And when they set out for this hike, they really didn't realize how long it would take and how arduous the trek would be. They just wanted to do it as a family. They thought it would be fun and interesting. So by the time they reached the summit, it had taken them 8 hours to do so, and it was 4 p.m. So they knew at that point, they're like, oh my gosh, if we're going to have to get down before dark, we've got to hop to it and hurry. But after an 8-hour trek up a mountain, that takes a lot out of you. So they did take a little moment just to take a quick break, get a little bite to eat, some water, before they sat back down. I do have to apologize for my pug in the back. He hasn't been feeling well, so he's very attached, and he's in here and he's licking and slobbering, so hopefully that's not disturbing the video. If so, I apologize. Anyhow, back to the story. So after Jamie's family started back down the mountain, they reached a plateau, and it was near Thoreau Springs, and it had taken about 2 hours to reach that spot. And, they'd been going over a lot of rocks and all that kind of stuff. So, when you're doing that, you kind of got to be careful so that you don't twist an ankle or slip down, So that's why it had taken 2 hours to get to that point. Once they reached the Thoreau Springs, they, had to fill up their water bottles just to make sure they had enough water for the rest of the way down. So they did that. And as they were doing that, waiting for each other, Jamie looks forward on the trail, looks back, and, her family's really the only ones right there. They can't see anyone all the way back, from their vantage point, or all the way forward, just making sure of their surroundings as they go. Well, after an hour more of trekking down the mountain, they reached a place called the Gateway. And it was here that things started to get very tricky. It was starting to get dangerous just because of the way you had to go down that certain part. It was just, the trail itself was it was very narrow, and it winded through all these sheer cliff areas, so one wrong move in that narrow part going down, you're going to fall. So you just had to be mindful and very careful going down that way. Earlier in the day, Jamie herself had slipped on some rocks, not at that part of the mountain going up, but because she slipped, even though she was being careful, that had kind of made her just a little bit she was getting a little bit terrified, it said, at this point, because it was looking so treacherous. And she certainly didn't want to fall, because if she did right here at this point, like I said, over the cliff you could go. And so because of the, her anxiousness about this, she let her husband and her 18-year-old son take the lead as her and her daughter kind of followed behind carefully. And, and they're going, it's slow going because you do really have to be careful. So they're kind of scooting their bodies and they're crawling at some points, and they're just, going all over these rough parts of rocks, that just want to give way and, roll down, and it's just dangerous to walk on them. So they decided to scoot and kind of crawl over that one part. And it, it wasn't a quick part. It was a ways to go on this narrow path. And it had been very quiet for most of the trip until finally at one point, Jamie just got so scared and worried about what could happen that she finally just yelled out as her family scooting along. She just yelled, "Oh God, please get us off this mountain." And she kept saying that over and over, just kind of screaming it out. And remember, no one else was around at this point. It was just the four of her family members. Well, as Jamie's screaming that a few times out in the air and just kind of crying for help, a man appears, and he's a hiker, but he came out of nowhere, and they didn't even hear him coming. Especially if you're going over that kind of terrain, you would hear rocks or dirt or shuffling. They heard nothing. He just appeared behind them, like as if he was just hiking right behind them. So he didn't really speak. He didn't say a word. He just immediately went to help, one by one, helping the family down and which way to go, how to turn their feet. He's doing it. He's not even talking again. He's just doing it and taking each one along. And they're kind of mimicking what the hiker's doing to get down that narrow part carefully. And that went on for about an hour. And when it finally started to ease up and the trail kind of widened a bit, they were able to finally get a really good look at him and able to meet him. His name was Steve. He looked about in his mid to late 50s. Jamie said that he had the bluest of eyes, she couldn't stop looking at them. They were just so blue and beautiful. And Steve, he spoke about his family. He said that he was a teacher and that he loved hiking, and he hiked this particular trail on this mountain in Maine every weekend. They got to talking, and that was nice as they carried on down the mountain together. They came upon another man that was just sitting on the ground, and he looked distressed, just like a little bit troubled. So Steve went up to him just to check on him. And it turns out the man wasn't hurt or anything like that. He was just tired because he had run out of water and he had to sit down and rest, basically, because he was scared, like, what am I going to do with no water if I keep carrying on? So Steve pulls out of his bag a full sealed water bottle, and he hands it to the gentleman and lets him have it. And then they, carried on their way. And the family, Jamie's family and Steve, they walked a bit further until they came upon, it was like a tree line. And it said at that point they parted ways. So Steve went his way and they carried on down the little bit rest of the way they had to go to get to the bottom of the mountain. Jamie just said, she said, just as fast as he appeared with no sound, he left in the same way, like just so fast, and it's like he was gone, So it's just a very strange encounter, but thank goodness, because they were really in some trouble in that narrow spot up there. Once the family carried on a little ways down, they finally made it down. It's dark at this point, and Jamie's husband kind of just goes over to her and he says, God sent that angel to help us today. He was clear and adamant that that's who Steve was. The family as a whole also, they ended up, just talking about it amongst themselves. And they were all, they all agreed that, yes, God sent them help that day when things looked treacherous and Jamie was crying out. It was like, well, here you go, Of course, again, as we say in most of these stories, when there's an angel involved, we don't know for certain. He could have just been a nice gentleman that walks there every weekend, like he said, or hikes there. So either way, angel or not, God still sent them somebody to be able to come along at that point in time and be able to help them down carefully, as well as help the man that had run out of water. I thought that another very cool story to share with you guys. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please remember to like and subscribe. And I just want to say thank you for watching. I know I have a lot of friends and family, and now there's starting to be a few subscribers who I don't know. And that's exciting to see. I want people to enjoy these stories and just to have hope and just a positive outlook. So thank you. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys for the next one.